Hey YouTube, it is League Turnover today, and we have on top of Great League teams, which I did this morning, we are looking at Little Cup teams. And Little Cup, honestly, this is one of the most wide Little Cups we've had in a long time. And that is because we thought Smeargle was going to be in this, but they ended up banning Smeargle. So Smeargle's banned, and then Mural, Shuckle, and Bronzer do not meet the Little Holiday Cup criteria. So what you get is a very wide balanced meta. So as you can see by the ratings here, just to put in perspective why I'm bringing up the ratings is because when you have something like Smeargle or Bronzer or Shuckle, they basically have a score of 100, and then number 2 is like 88, 86, which just kind of just shows you like, oh yeah, this Pokemon's going to beat like 95% of the Pokemon. But as you can see here, you have Amora as number 1. We'll go over the rankings in a second. I just want to go for the ratings first. But like Amora 94.8, and then very, very close, 92s, 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 91s, 90s, 90, 89, right down to number 22. And even the Pikachu's at 88. So it's basically saying like there are a lot of Pokemon in this meta that can do very, very well. And it's true. I've used, we'll go over a bunch of teams. I've used a bunch of these Pokemon. There's some Pokemon that I really like. There's some Pokemon that I didn't like as much. So let's go over the normal. Let's go over the normal typing first, just because I saw a few of them. Wiggly again. Let me talk about the Little Cup for those of you who have never played in this, or just kind of forget how it works. Basically, if you do any sort of move from a first evolution Pokemon, it does like 50% in a neutral situation. So Amora with Weather Ball will do 50%. Trying to find first level. Joltik with like Cross Poison Discharge will do like 50%. Fletching with Flyer Swift will do like 50% if it's like neutral. And then you have these evolved Pokemon, which have less bulk to them than the sort of lower levels, because this Amora can get to like level, actually that's only like level 15. But I guess some of these like, yeah, Wiggly will get to like level 9, right? So you're just going to have generally more higher levels, which usually means more bulk, but you have a higher attack stats with these evolved Pokemon like Wigglytuff, Sandslash, Ninetales. So you have higher attack stat, which is why your Wiggly at 3, and I looking at now Charm Ninetales at 3. Wiggly at 5, Charm Ninetales at 3 is because that raw damage from evolved Pokemon is going to do so much to these little Pokemon. I call them little Pokemon, but they're like first evolution Pokemon, or even second evolution Pokemon under 500 CP. These charms are going to just add up so much. So you're going to see a fast move damage team for mine. Fast move damage is a very legit strategy in this meta. So that's why like the Charmers, Ninetales that are so high ranked. But yeah, you got a lot of normal typing just because there's not a lot of fighting in this, right? So you got Wiggly, you got Miltank, you got Diggersby, you got Licky Licky, Fletching is half flying, but so you got a lot of normal typings that are, and Amora is half rock. I could talk about the rock too, Amora and Aurorus, because there is, and Sandslash because it's half steel. There's like no fighting in this meta. Like if you put in fighting, there is Annihilate at 58, but then you got to go down to Beware and Breloom, which I tried on a team. It's just so glassy with Force Palm. So there's not a lot of fighters, which means that these normal typings, these steel typings, and these rock typings get a little bit of a buff up because that's one of their main weaknesses. So that's why they're super high. And then this meta benefits anything that is either very, very spammy or just a ton of fast move damage, right? So you have Amora with Powder Snow Weather Ball, Powder Snow Ice Punch on Sandslash, and then you just have the over damaged Charm Ninetales. Fire Spin kind of acts as like a fast move, and then you have Bone Club, which is quick, and then you got like Rollout, which body spams, which goes pretty spammy. Diggersby just is Diggersby, right? It's just pretty bulky. And when some of your top Pokemon are weak to ground, weak to fire, you just have a great coverage in this meta. So Diggersby pretty strong. Joltik coming in here, spammy Sucker Punch, Cross Poison, Quick Attack, Fly. Like there's a lot of just like spammy Pokemon. Pika Libre, Flying Press, one of the best fast moves in the game, right? So lots of variety with these Pokemon. Lots of options, and let's look at some of the teams that worked from week 1. This was maybe my best Little Cup team. So Golett, I didn't even talk about. Let's start with what I did talk about. Pika Libre, if you have one, for the legends out there, or if you traded with a legend, it only takes 5 Thundershocks to get to a Flying Press. And I mentioned that every move from these first evolutions does 50%. Not Flying Press. Flying Press does like 90% in neutral situations, 100% in super effective situations. It is such a hard hitting move, Flying Press. So great move, Thunder Punch for your coverage on your flyers, and Stab for Pikachu. Golett, I kind of mentioned that there's a lot of things weak to ground on the top. You know, you got Sand Slash and Steels, you got your rocks, you got your electrics like Pika Libre and other electric Pokemon. So ground beats a lot of them. Again, Mud Slap is very, very hard hitting. You don't even need Nightshade. Some people instead of Nightshade, use Brick Break to lower their opponent's defense, because then the Mud Slaps really add up. And Swinub is one of those where like you might want to use Amora, you might want to use other Ice type Pokemon, but same sort of thing. It fits the bill of a very, very spammy Pokemon with good coverage in this meta. Powder Snow, Body Slam only 10 to get to overall and 12 for an Icy Wind. Fast move damage Pokemon. I talked about how fast move damage can be very overpowering in this meta. So Geodude with Rock Throw, Cottony with Charm, and Execute with Confusion. So you can throw in a double Charm user, and those other Charm users that I mentioned, like in Ninetales and Wigglytuff. Cottony just, I think, has a little more bulk than probably Ninetales does. And then Geodude with the Rock Throw is a nice for all these kind of fire Pokemon that are going to be around to beat the back line here. Execute was okay. Execute was a great save swap in the little cup that just had grass, fire, and water. It worked very well, but this has a little more typings in this, which gives this a little less play in this meta. This is when I started. Again, I started with Pokemon that I just had, and the sum of this team is that Litleo is extremely, extremely strong in this meta. So I use Chinchou, but I've also used Lantern on a back team. I don't think Chinchou is as strong. Again, it really dominated in a water, fire, grass meta, because you could beat the other waters because you're electric, and you beat the fires because you're water. So it was really, really strong in the meta, but it's not as strong here. And Sandshrew is okay. The Night Slash is very, very spammy, but the problem with this Pokemon is that it doesn't really have a good second move. As you see, Blizzard, you're never going to get to a Blizzard. So it really, with this Pokemon, you are just spamming Powder Snow's Night Slashes. And I think it had more play in metas where Bronzer was a thing, because Night Slash hits super effective against Bronzer, which is why I think, and it resists like the tackles and confusions of Bronzer. So that's why it had more play in that meta. But Litleo has a lot of play in this meta, just because the raw damage of Incinerate is a great save swap, not a lot of fighters. The raw damage of Incinerate is so good, and then you have like Crunch for coverage. So it's a very, very strong Pokemon. You'll probably be seeing a lot of that. And speaking of that, this is a viewer submitted. Litleo I just talked about. Annihilate, but there's not a lot of fighters, but there's a lot of things weak to fighting. So using an Annihilate is not bad. It's like a level 6 Annihilate, just FYI. So it's very, very glassy, but a pretty strong Pokemon, because there's a lot of things weak to counter. You can just kind of just double shield and counter down. And Joltik with a Sucker Punch, and being able to just like potentially buff your attack, but then a hard hitting Sucker Punch, and Cross Poison Spam combo there. Drifloon and Ducklet are on this team. So Drifloon, again, is one of those, as you can see, Shadow Astonish. There's some moves. I talked about a lot of the charms. Those are like 5.4 damage per turn. And Shadow Stab Astonish is pretty up there in terms of damage per turn. So if you want a hard-hitting damage per turn that deals with like Golett, and other ground-type Pokemon, where you're half flying, so you resist the ground-type moves, Drifloon is very, very strong. And then Ducklet was was the top-ranked Pokemon in the water, fire, grass meta, because same thing, like you can deal with the waters because you're a water, you can deal with the grass because you're a flyer, and you can deal with the fire because you're a water. So it was the top-ranked Pokemon. It doesn't have as much play in this, but it does have a good amount of bulk to it. And whenever you have a Brave Bird on a Pokemon, everything does 50%, but not a Brave Bird. Brave Bird will pretty much one-shot the majority of things here. Wiggly, Litwick, and Amora. So again, Wiggly is just, I kind of talked about the charm damage that you're going to get with this Pokemon. Litwick, you can use Litleo, but Litwick has the sort of additional ghost typing that could help you if you see some fighters or moves with but it's just pure fire, right? Ember, Flame Charge, Mystical Fire, which is where you lose a bit of coverage if you run into like a water Pokemon. And then Amara is the top ranked. And why is it top ranked? Well, you got like okayish bulk. You got a spammy Weather Ball, and then you have an Ancient Power for some, I don't know about coverage, but yeah, I guess coverage on like fire Pokemon. So coverage on fire Pokemon, potentially boost your attack as well. I tried a double Astonish team. I'll talk. I wouldn't use Pumpkaboo. I did not find it was really good, even though it does spam it pretty quick, right? Well, no, it actually doesn't, because these are Astonish are 3-turn moves. But I was just like looking at the comparison to Drifloon, and Drifloon seems like so much stronger, even though they're both ghosts. So I'm starting to think that the shadow damage also really does make a difference. So I was not impressed by that. Double. So Marowak and Double I'll talk about for a second here, because Marowak is like a top ranked Pokemon. You know, you got your Fire Spin, which will do great against these Steel types and these Ice types. And then you have like a Bone Club, which gives you some coverage on the Electric types. And Shadow Bone, if you get to it, could be a great move as well. And Double I use because, like, again, there's a lot of things weak to fighting, but not a lot of fighters in the meta. So having a Pokemon with a Double Kick, which is a fighting type move as your fast move, gives you some coverage against the meta. A couple more here. Talk about Ducklet, talk about Pika Libre, and Lantern. Yeah, I used a Water Gun Lantern. It was okay. Like, I think it provided coverage because there's like a decent amount of fire, and some ground and some rock, which are all weak to water. So having a water gun type move was great. And there's not a ton of grass. There's like Cottony and a couple other grass, but there's not a ton of them. So you get a little more coverage from like ability to like not have to worry about that. So yeah, it's a decent Pokemon, but not anything that's like a top rank that you need to like worry about or build against. And then Breloom, we talked about, very, very glassy, but you get a stab Force Palm. So this thing does so much damage, but it can take absolutely nothing. How I said that, like, oh, these like Weather Balls do like 50%. I mean, I understand it's super effective, but like any normal type little move does like 80% on this thing. It is so glassy, but the Force Palm is really, really hard hitting. So that is the Little Cup. Let me know in the comments below what you're playing. I would assume most people are playing Great League, but we've got some Little Cup teams that some viewers submitted, and so we will showcase those as well this week on top of a lot of Great League teams. So I think it's a pretty good week for leagues, so I would expect more. Well, I mean, it's New Year's, so I don't know how many people are going to be playing, but I would expect more people to be playing this week. So that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you will be playing, and I will see you guys in the next one.